Lucifer was never the king of hell, though fear has taught many hearts to picture him that way. In the dark, hell was not his palace, and the abyss was never a throne room prepared for his glory. Under judgment, the seat beneath him was only a prison shaped by pride and given the sound of power beneath the dark. Scripture does not place the keys of death and Hades in the hand of the fallen one. Inside the silence, the keys belong to the risen Christ, the living one, who died and lives forever. While Hades listened, that truth was the terror hidden beneath every stone Lucifer ever called his kingdom. Under judgment, he could command shadows, accuse souls, and clothe despair in the language of justice near the throne. But he could not unlock death, and he could not close what Christ would one day open beneath the dark. Long before the empty tomb, Lucifer built a lie large enough for the broken to fear. Under judgment, he told the fallen that exile could become empire if they stopped calling it judgment. Under judgment, he told himself the abyss had received him because it needed a ruler, not a sentence. Near the throne,
If heaven has cast me down, then this deep will learn to rise beneath my name.
his voice moved across the dark, and the fallen turned because silence hurt more than speech. Near the throne,
We followed your promise of freedom, and now even our wings remember chains. A wound this deep will either devour us or teach us what to hunger for.
Lucifer heard their fear and understood that fear could be shaped before it destroyed them. In the dark,
Do not kneel before Rune, when Rune can be taught to kneel before us.
at his word, black stone rose from the abyss like pain, learning the shape of command. Under judgment, it was not a throne because heaven named it so, but because pride needed somewhere to sit. Under judgment,
A symbol can hold the broken when no promise remains strong enough to gather them.
Lucifer sat, and the abyss grew still, as if a prisoner had finally decorated his cell near the throne. Yet the first law of that kingdom was not strength, but the refusal to repent. While Hades listened, far above, heaven did not tremble before his throne, because heaven knew what he refused. Under judgment, a prison does not become a kingdom, because the prisoner speaks with a royal voice. Before unseen eyes, he could not hold the keys. So he learned to stand beside locked doors and whisper near the throne.
If I cannot own death, I will teach souls to believe death owns them.
Beneath that false throne, his council gathered, where accusation had become the heir. Near the throne,
Give me language, and I will make rebellion sound like honest self-defense. Give me need, and I will make possession feel like justice long denied.
Give me envy, and gratitude will rot before the soul remembers its gifts.
he understood humanity would become the field where his prison pretended to expand. Beneath the cross, the abyss could not climb to heaven, but it could enter where human beings were wounded. Near the throne,
We will not break heaven's gates when human hearts open from below.
a laborer in the market felt this before he knew any demon had spoken near him. While Hades listened, he had been cheated at sunset, paid with 1 coin, and laughed at by men with clean hands. Before heaven, his first pain was honest, but the whisper beside it arrived dressed as justice. While Hades listened,
You are not becoming cruel. You are only refusing to be humiliated again.
Take what they denied you, and call it balance before your heart calls it theft.
The man looked at a strong box, then at a child being blamed for another man's hunger. Beneath the dark, one word from him could have saved the child, but silence promised him a cheaper freedom. In the dark, in the abyss, Lucifer watched the human mouth close and called that silence progress under judgment.
Do not push him. The door opens wider when the first step feels like his own.
That was the empire he truly wanted. Not land below heaven, but consent inside the soul. Under judgment, he wanted humans to choose chains so carefully that they would defend the chains as freedom. Near the throne, it whispered into pain, until pain began to sound like permission and even justice. Beneath the cross,
A soul defends sin more fiercely when it believes the reason belongs to itself.
yet one truth remained, beyond every demon gathered beneath his false throne, where old shadows listened.
Let them fear me as king, and fear will become a gate they open willingly.
Humans began picturing hell as Lucifer's palace because terror often mistakes a jailer for king. Near the throne, Lucifer was not the master of hell, but the first rebel walking toward its fire. Inside the silence, his greatest weapon was accusation, because accusation can make a soul afraid of mercy. Before heaven,
If guilt becomes their mirror, they will stop seeking the face of mercy.
If death becomes their master, they will worship what death can take.
Lucifer rose from his throne, and the shadows leaned inward as if waiting for command. Near the throne,
We will not merely teach them to sin, but teach them to hide after sin.
and one day, fear would meet a love that could enter death without becoming its servant. Near the throne, a seed would crush the serpent, and a suffering servant would carry griefs, not his own. In the dark, a light would rise for those who sat in darkness and beneath the shadow of death. Inside the silence, Lucifer heard those promises across the ages like footsteps in a locked corridor. Before unseen eyes,
Promises are easy before pain arrives, but mercy must still pass through blood.
then came the wilderness, where hunger burned beneath the sun, and the Son of Man stood alone. Near the throne, Lucifer approached him softly, not as a beast, but as a voice that understood need. Near the throne,
If you are the Son, command these stones to become bread beneath your hand.
but Jesus did not turn need into a throne, nor hunger into a master over obedience. Beneath the dark, the first door stayed closed, and Lucifer felt something colder than anger move through him. Under judgment,
Then leap before watching eyes, and make heaven prove its care in public.
but Jesus would not make faith perform for pride, nor force the Father into spectacle. Beneath the dark, the second door stayed closed, and the desert's silence became unbearable to the tempter. In the dark,
Then take the kingdoms without the road of rejection, suffering, blood, and cross.
but Jesus would not receive from darkness what only the Father could rightly give. Beneath the cross, the third door stayed closed, and Lucifer saw a soul with no hidden room for him. Before unseen eyes, he returned to the abyss with no wound on his body, yet humiliation burning in his spirit. Near the throne,
The desert did not crown you, though you return, wearing fury like authority.
Lucifer did not answer quickly, because defeat becomes more dangerous when it begins to think. In the dark, He looked from the throne to the gates, and from the gates to the chambers of death. Near the throne, the old lie within him whispered that if life could not be bought, perhaps death could contain it. Under judgment,
If he will not take the world by my hand, he will enter the grave by theirs. Let truth look defeated enough for lies to breathe again without shame.
Let death do what desire could not, and keep him where hunger cannot reach.
at that word, the darkness grew attentive, because every false kingdom trusts death in the end. Near the throne, Lucifer did not hold the keys, but he had long believed locked doors favored his voice. In the dark, he had stood beside graves for ages, whispering that loss was stronger than promise. Near the throne, he had watched mourners bury hope and taught them to call despair realism, where old shadows listened. So he fixed his eyes upon Jerusalem, where the cross already cast its shadow forward. Beneath the dark, he did not yet understand that the shadow of the cross was not defeat approaching. Beneath the dark, it was the shape of a key being raised above every locked door in creation. Beneath the watching dark, Jerusalem breathed under a darkening sky. Unaware, every unseen realm was leaning close. Under judgment, the cross stood ahead like shame prepared by men and victory hidden by God. Before the hidden witnesses, Lucifer had long taught the condemned to blur the words death, others, hell, and abyss. Beneath the cross,
Let the names bleed together. A rebel sounds like a king when no one knows the borders of the dark.
but death was the enemy that ended breath, and Hades was the realm where the dead waited. Near the throne, the lake of fire was judgment prepared for the devil, a sentence not yet carried out. Under judgment, the abyss was his theater of refusal. Not a kingdom granted, but a prison dressed as one. Inside the silence, heaven did not confuse those borders, and no scripture had placed a crown on the condemned before heaven. Lucifer watched from that old darkness, certain that suffering would expose mercy as weakness. Under judgment,
Let the world see him rejected, and faith will learn to fear obedience.
if truth is mocked in public, many will mistake the mockery for judgment. Jesus walked downward by choice, carrying a cross no demon could force upon him. Beneath holy judgment,
Let him descend then. Every descent ends where I have learned to wait.
but Lucifer confused the grave with a border and death with a locked door. While the abyss listened, far above the hill, Michael watched without drawing the sword that once cast Lucifer down before heaven. His hand trembled near the hilt, not from doubt, but from the agony of holy restraint. Near the throne,
Lord, the accuser believes the silence means you have abandoned the Son.
no answer came in thunder, and Michael lowered his hand before pride could borrow his grief. Near the throne,
Then I will trust the silence, because the cross belongs to obedience deeper than war.
he stood his post above the hill, with his sword still sheathed, and that restraint cost him everything. In the dark,
What I cannot do with this sword, the wounds below are already doing without me.
for once, the Guardian understood that the greatest victory would not be carried by angels. In the dark, the sword that stopped rebellion could not open the grave or redeem the guilty heart. Under judgment, on the hill, rulers laughed, soldiers gambled, and the crowd watched love bleed, while Hades listened.
Heaven is silent. Even now, the Father does not tear the sky open,
Then love may have reached the price it cannot afford to pay.
Lucifer rose slowly, and the throne beneath him seemed almost confident again, while the abyss listened.
Silence was always the shape of abandonment, if one dares to name it.
But even in pain, Jesus did not make suffering into a throne for bitterness. While the abyss listened,
Curse the road, curse the silence, and curse the hands that allowed this hour.
but no curse rose from him to feed the kingdom built on refusal. Before every shadow listening in the dark,
He bleeds, yet the bleeding does not speak the language we taught mankind.
He loses everything, yet no hunger in him reaches for theft.
He is humiliated, yet envy finds no mirror inside him before the dark.
he was carrying human pain without letting human pain become Lord beneath the cross and the dark sky.
Then let death answer what pain could not make him say, while the abyss listened.
Lucifer did not own death, but he had long used its shadow as a pulpit. Under the weight of judgment, he preached beside every grave that promise was beautiful but weaker than loss. Inside the unseen war,
Let the grave close. Once it closes, even hope will learn to whisper.
then Jesus breathed his last, and the unseen realms shook without naming what changed. Beneath the dark, the earth trembled. The veil was torn, and hidden places felt authority moving. While Hades listened,
Something is wrong. The silence below us is not making room for triumph.
Death has received many, but it has never hesitated like this before.
instead, he heard footsteps where no prisoner should have been able to walk, where old shadows listened. The darkness recoiled before it saw him, because it felt itself being seen. Before the hidden witnesses, then Jesus entered the realm that had mistaken itself for the final word. Beneath the watching dark,
No light has the right to enter this place, while I still sit upon its throne.
I did not enter as your prisoner, and I did not come by your permission.
Lucifer closed his hand around the air, as if command itself could be seized. Inside the unseen war,
These doors receive the condemned, and every condemned soul knows my accusation. Accusation may stand near the door, but it does not hold the key. If he holds authority here, our language has stood on borrowed ground.
If death answers him, the hunger beneath every grave was never ours.
Lucifer turned on them with fury, because fear in followers makes a false king naked. Near the throne,
Be silent, or I will teach your doubt the cost of speaking in my realm.
Jesus walked forward, and every chain near him trembled without being touched. While the abyss listened,
They are guilty, and justice cannot be mocked, because compassion arrives late. Justice is not mocked when mercy pays what accusation only names.
he stepped closer, and the darkness did not press back, but pulled away, as from something older than itself.
You carry wounds, yet you speak, as if wounds are not the language of the defeated. These wounds are not defeat. They are the cost love chose so death could not name the price. They chose darkness, and I only taught them to live honestly inside it. You taught them to call prison home because you feared the open door.
Lucifer heard that answer, and felt it land in a place too deep for argument to reach. Inside the silence,
If sin may be answered by mercy, then words no longer mean anything.
Mercy does not erase truth. Mercy carries truth farther than judgment alone.
They sold themselves when the world offered them enough to forget you. They hungered for life, and you taught hunger to kneel before possession. They hated their brother's blessing because heaven gave uneven measures.
You taught them to weigh love with numbers instead of receiving it as gift.
Each answer fell not as debate, but as verdict, and the demons heard the difference. Beneath the dark,
You answer servants and cowards, but I am not one of these trembling things.
I know who you were, and what you chose when mercy called you back.
Mercy was a chain, asking me to become small before a throne.
Mercy was the door you refused, because it proved you were not king.
Lucifer stood alone before Jesus, and the throne behind him felt farther away. Beneath holy judgment, he was not king of hell, and he had never been king of death. Beneath the full weight of holy judgment, he was the first prisoner who taught other prisoners to praise the walls before the hidden witnesses.
If I am prisoner, why do the fearful still answer when I call?
Fear listens loudly, but fear is not the same as rightful authority.
If I hold no rule, why have burial gates answered my voice since the first exile?
Graves never obeyed you. They waited for the day I would enter them.
The gates of death and Hades shuddered as that answer touched their foundations. Beneath holy judgment,
Then show them your key, if you did not cross this threshold empty.
yet every gate bent toward him, as if remembering the voice that made it. Beneath the watching dark, there were no golden teeth upon the key, no shining metal for the demons to measure. Near the throne, the key was the authority of a life no sin could claim and no grave could keep. Inside the unseen war, it was obedience where Lucifer had chosen pride, and surrender where hell expected bargaining. Near the throne, it was blood that did not beg accusation to be quiet, because it answered accusation fully. In the dark, it was the living sun entering the locked house and proving the lock was not sovereign. Before heaven, the key was authority, obedience, blood. Death entered freely, and life unconquered. Beneath the dark,
I am the living one. I was dead, and behold, I live forevermore.
The keys of death and Hades are not yours, and they never were.
the lost souls wept because the lie they had feared most had been named. As the unseen realm listened, he simply stood where despair claimed no visitor from God could ever stand. While the abyss listened,
You may hold keys, but many will still choose my darkness over your light. Many will hide, and many will run, and still I will call them by name.
Then I will accuse, until their own ears reject your calling.
Then I will answer with wounds that speak louder than accusation.
the grave had received Jesus, but the grave had not understood whom it received. While Hades listened, Hades had expected a prisoner, but the footsteps belonged to the Lord of the Keys. Before unseen eyes, and above the world, the third morning waited like fire hidden under the edge of night. In the dark, the third morning began with a silence, waiting outside a sealed tomb in the garden. Beneath the dark, when dawn struck the garden, It did not ask Rome for permission to enter history. Before unseen eyes, the seal remained Roman for a moment. But the tomb had already ceased being obedient to death. Near the throne, the stone moved like a servant, not to free Christ, but to expose what death had failed to keep. In the dark, the grave was empty before the world understood that emptiness could become an announcement. Before heaven, Lucifer felt that announcement as a silence that finally told him the truth about his entire reign. In the dark, beneath creation, Lucifer remained where the words of Jesus had left him exposed. Beneath the cross, the demons waited for him to speak. Because false kingdoms survive by performance, beneath the cross,
Say something, Lucifer, or their fear will begin listening for another voice.
The prisoners are looking toward the light, as if poverty itself found bread.
Lucifer turned slowly, and the old beauty of his anger returned like fire without warmth. Under judgment,
Hope can be wounded again if we teach it to expect what will not remain.
yet even as he spoke, the gates behind him trembled, as though remembering their Maker. Beneath the dark, he stood as the crucified one, yet no wound in him spoke the language of defeat. Inside the silence, they were royal marks of love, entering judgment and coming out with authority. Beneath holy judgment,
Wounds are still wounds, however much heaven teaches them to shine.
These wounds carried judgment paid, mercy opened, and death stripped of its throne.
Lucifer had preached that lie beside every burial since humanity first learned mourning. Under judgment, but now the grave had taken Jesus and discovered that it could not digest life. While the abyss listened,
Many will still die, and many will still tremble when the final breath comes.
They may pass through death, but death will no longer speak as master.
Lucifer's greatest lie was never merely that he ruled some burning kingdom below. Beneath the cross, his greatest lie was that death had the final word over every wounded human soul. Inside the silence,
If shame no longer seals them, they will confess what we taught them to hide.
If death no longer owns them, they will stop worshiping what death can take.
They are guilty, and guilt should keep their faces bent toward the dust. Guilt brought them low, but my blood opens the road shame closed. You cannot make rebellion innocent by calling wounded creatures beloved. I do not call evil innocent. I call the sinner back from prison.
the keys belonged to the one whose obedience entered death and returned unconquered. Beneath the dark, he rose because life in him was stronger than the sentence death tried to enforce. Before unseen eyes, in the world above, the women came carrying spices for a body they expected to mourn. Before heaven, they came with love, but not yet with understanding, because grief often arrives before faith. Before heaven, they expected stone, silence, and the holy sorrow of doing one last faithful thing. Beneath the cross, instead, the morning met them with terror, brightness, and the impossible absence of a corpse. Near the throne, the empty place preached before any apostle found the courage to speak. Before the hidden witnesses, it declared that death had received the Son and returned nothing but folded cloth. Beneath the cross, in that folded silence, Lucifer's entire sermon, beside every grave, began to rot. While Hades listened, the grave had always said final, But now, final had been answered by a living name. Before unseen eyes, the throne beneath him cracked into the truth of what it had always been. Beneath the watching dark, a chair of refusal, a prisoner's pulpit, a monument of exile built from pride. Beneath holy judgment, and somewhere in the city, the laborer who had chosen silence heard that the tomb was empty. Beneath the dark, he did not yet understand it fully, but his hand had not taken from the strongbox, and the child still lived.
No, the world will still fear me, and fear will keep my name alive.
Fear may echo for a season, but it cannot overturn what is finished.
It stood like a sealed decree over every accusation Lucifer had ever sharpened. Inside the unseen war, but he could not be king of hell, because hell was not his to own beneath the judgment of the living God.
Then what remains for us if accusation no longer sits above all things? What remains is the lie they are still afraid to stop believing.
Lucifer knew the keys were never his, so he fought for imagination instead, before the hidden witnesses.
He called the prison a throne because he could not bear to name the sentence. But the keys were never his, and every loyal host has seen it now.
He looked like what he had always been, a defeated rebel waiting for judgment. Inside the unseen war, do not miss the wound this made inside the kingdom of refusal. While Hades listened in a deeper silence, Lucifer could survive being hated, because hatred still treated him as important. While Hades listened, he could survive being feared, because fear still gave his voice a kind of throne beneath the dark. But he could not survive being exposed as unnecessary before the authority of Christ. Under judgment, the risen Lord did not need Lucifer's permission, and he did not need his surrender. Beneath the dark, he simply stood beyond death, and every false crown in the abyss lost weight. Beneath the watching dark,
I will still speak, and many will still mistake my voice for truth.
Speak then, but my sheep will know the voice that calls them home.
he left as Lord, as Victor, as the one whom death had failed to keep, while the unseen realm waited. This is where the story leaves the abyss and enters every human heart still listening. Inside the silence, the remaining war is not for the keys, because that war is finished and over. Beneath the watching dark, the remaining war is for the imagination, where shame still builds its private thrones. Under judgment,
The ashamed do not need chains if they believe the open door was never meant for them.
Lucifer cannot lock the door, but he can persuade the wounded to stop reaching for it. Beneath the dark, he cannot rule death, but he can make the living spend their years obeying the fear of death. In the dark, he cannot cancel mercy, but he can teach wounded hearts to distrust the very sound of mercy. Before heaven,
Let them believe the cost of returning is greater than the cost of staying, while the abyss waits.
if Jesus holds the keys, death is not a kingdom, and the devil is not its king. Inside the unseen war, the accuser may stand near the door, but he cannot decide whom mercy calls before the hidden witnesses. Confidence is not authority. Accusation is not truth. And fear is not lordship. Beneath holy judgment, so when guilt speaks with confidence, ask whether confidence is the same as truth. Inside the silence, when shame tells you to hide, ask whether hiding has ever healed what it protects. Before unseen eyes, when fear says, the grave owns tomorrow. Remember, the grave has already been contradicted in the dark.
I will still name their wounds, and they will still mistake my naming for the final word.
When the accuser names your sin, do not pretend he lied about the wound before the hidden witnesses, but do not let him lie about the Savior who paid for that wound in blood. Before the hidden witnesses, the Christian hope is not that evil is harmless or that judgment is unreal. Before the hidden witnesses, the hope is that Christ has authority where every other voice only has noise. Beneath holy judgment, the devil may roar. But roaring is not the same as holding the keys. While the locked gates trembled, the throne of refusal will crack. The voice of accusation will fail, and the keys remain in wounded hands. It belonged to the Lamb who entered death without fear and left with the keys. Beneath holy judgment, if the reason Christ holds the keys, then speak that truth aloud, where old shadows once listened in silence. And if this story has strengthened what you carry, remain with us for the next chapter of the eternal war.